All this discussion about game reviews, and more specifically, IGN's reviews for recent games, got me thinking. And as many of you know, there are a lot of people out there that consider thinking for yourself a dangerous thing. But I still thought for myself for a bit. And I wondered, why is it that we notice that these reviews don't seem to match what we think they should? And by we, I mean gamers, real gamers. We're not paid to review games, at least most of us aren't. We don't even do it as a hobby, at least most of us don't. I do sometimes actually review games, I talk about games, and I talk about the gaming industry. But I often hear people defend IGN, usually other professional game reviewers, other outlets, other people in the industry, saying that you can't simply compare the score that IGN gave to one game with the score that they gave to another and say that it seems wildly out of place, or it simply doesn't seem to fit within the context of someone who loves games, because these two reviews came from two different reviewers. I'm going to tell you, it shouldn't really matter that much which reviewer at an outlet actually reviews a game. And when I say that, what I mean is, it shouldn't matter a ton, because everyone at that outlet should be, well, real gamers who like games. Granted, you probably don't want to have someone review a sports game who doesn't like sports or sports games. That includes me. I have zero interest in sports or sports games, so I'm not the one to review them. You probably also don't want to put someone in charge of a first-person shooter review who just doesn't like first-person shooters. They prefer big RPGs, open world games, games that have a narrative structure, they have lots of story, there's lots of mechanics and stuff going on. You probably don't want to put them in charge of the next Doom game, because it just doesn't seem to fit. You're going to get these wildly different scores based on the personal opinions and tastes of the reviewers. So how is it that IGN and many other so-called professional game critics differ so wildly from their actual gaming audience? That's what I want to talk about. I'm MarcFoxx, and this is RealMarcFoxx.
Oh yeah, baby!
Alright, well, let's get down to the chud level on this one, guys. I often hear people defending IGN or other similar so-called professional gaming review outlets by saying that it really matters who does the review and to stop comparing different reviews for different games from different reviewers, because obviously these are different people. But my argument is really simple. It should not matter so significantly who did the review. You've got people on your team or website whose reviews can vary that wildly, then that's an indication that you need to segment who does which reviews. Don't have a narrative, story-obsessed individual review a comedic boomer shooter. It's not for him. Prime example is Will Borger for IGN, who kept criticizing Mouse PI for Hire because of ludonarrative dissonance, a pseudo-intellectual term in which they try to argue that the violence present in the game doesn't really jive with the story. He obsessed over the fact that the main character is supposed to be a PI, and yet he's running around shooting tons of other people, or in this case, mice. He also obsessed over the fact that they constantly referred to cheese in jokes. Obviously, none of us care about any of that. We really don't care if it totally makes sense in the context. We don't care about stupid left-winger terms like ludonarrative dissonance. They should have had someone who likes boomer shooters actually review that game, not someone who's looking for the next over-the-shoulder, third-person, zoomed-in camera, story-based, narrative-driven, single-player experience with minimal gameplay and tons of dialogue. Just not the same thing. I would never try to do any sort of review of a sports game. Just like I said, I don't care about sports, zero interest, I'm not one to do it. This is a clear failure on the part of the editor-in-chief to properly assign review tasks. Or in some cases, it's not really a failure so much as it is an intentional mistake that they don't mind making. Because I don't think the editor-in-chief of IGN really cares all that much which games the reviewers like or dislike. I don't even think the editor-in-chief cares all that much whether they give the games a fair chance or a fair shot. All they care about is pushing something else, and we'll get to that. Let's look at Metacritic. One thing I continually notice with games, especially those that get a lot of attention in the conversation zeitgeist, is that there's often a huge disparity between the aggregated critic review score and the aggregated user review score. Sometimes the critics overwhelmingly rate a game very highly, while most average gamers rate it relatively poorly or even very poorly. We can see this same thing often happen with movies on websites like Rotten Tomatoes. When the so-called professional game reviewers come up with a score so radically different than the majority of gamers, it begs the question, who are these reviews supposed to be for? Gamers often say that the purpose of a game review is to inform the gaming consumer about which games they should or shouldn't buy, or whether they should wait for a discount before diving in. But if the so-called professional reviewers produce results that don't match what the average gamer wants, if the reviews are far off from how the majority of gaming consumers would feel about the game, then what's the fucking point? Who are they reviewing these games for? The average gamer? The majority of gamers? No. Let me propose something very different. I propose and firmly believe, established on quite a lot of evidence we've seen so far, that for most of these so-called professional game reviewers, the purpose is not to inform the gaming consumer. Instead, these reviews serve several different purposes. Number 1, to virtue signal their ideology to their own in-group. Number 2, to reward or punish game developers for their adherence to or lack of adherence to these same ideologies. Number 3, to attempt to push the gaming consumer into buying and playing the games that represent their worldview and ideology. Number 4, to stir up anger, controversy, and division, driving clicks or ad revenue. And finally, number 5, to push an active agenda. Let's discuss each of these briefly with an example or two. We have number 1, to virtue signal their ideology to their own in-group. Just take a look at the Wukong reviews. We all remember that Wukong review that talked about the problem of not enough diversity in a game about a monkey man, in which most of the characters weren't even human. There were complaints that the game didn't have enough female characters, as if a game needs female characters. I mean, a game technically doesn't need male characters. You have a game that takes place completely in the myth of the kind of Amazon society where it's all women and there's only women, which obviously couldn't exist, then it would make sense that the vast majority, if not all of the main characters, or even all of the characters at all, would be women. There's no absolute necessity to include any particular group of people in a game unless it's obvious it just doesn't make sense not to include them. We can also take a look at Stellar Blade reviews about Eve's depiction. The infamous case in which they said that Eve looks like somebody drawn by a person who's never even seen a woman before. Obviously, these are cases of virtue signaling their ideology to their own in-group. They want other people on the same side of the political spectrum as them to see the reviews and go, yes, that's one of us. Number 2 was to reward or punish game developers for their adherence or lack of adherence to these ideologies. Prime example, I'll just give you one, there's plenty of them, is Rebecca Valentine's absolutely horrendous and completely bogus hit piece on Game Science, the developer behind Wukong, in which she used bogus and misleading translations of what the developer said to try to blast them as being sexist and having created a culture of sexism and misogyny at the studio. That was bogus, that was false. She was proven wrong, objectively, and instead of admitting her fault, instead of admitting it was wrong, correcting the piece, and coming out and apologizing like any responsible journalist would, she went into temporary hiding to wait out the drama, only to rise again after everyone had moved on from the latest rage point of the day. Number 3 is to attempt to push the gaming consumer into buying and playing the games that represent their worldview and ideology. Prime example here, Mixtape, the most recent one as of the upload of this video. The Mixtape reviews are horribly astroturfed, very obviously so. There's no way that this barely interactive animation could even really qualify as a game, much less be a 10 out of 10 or a 9.5 or a 9. The reason they're giving those scores is they're trying to push you, the gaming consumer, into buying and playing it because it pushes their worldview and ideology. Mixtape is not the heaviest when it comes to pushing ideology. Not really heavy-handed, but it does present you with some very arrogant, self-centered, pretentious people who think the world revolves around them. And that's exactly what many of these so-called professional game journalists are. Pretentious, arrogant, self-absorbed individuals. Notice the heaps of praise given to Dragon Age the Veilguard, even though the vast majority of gamers consider it at best mediocre and a failure in the Dragon Age line, or at worst, consider it an outright terrible game with really horrendous dialogue. The story overall is bad, the dialogue overall is bad, but there are certain moments that have become iconic for just how terrible they are.
So, I'm non-binary.
What does that mean?
It means I don't feel like a man or a woman.
If you are neither a man nor a woman, then what are you?
Non-binary. I just said, and I'm going to use they instead of she from now on.
Also take note of all the praise for Concord, including IGN. Almost all of these professional game reviewers giving it incredible scores, saying that this is going to be the next big online service shooter game. And yet when it released, nobody wanted to play it. Nobody even wanted to play it when it was offered for free pre-release. It had abysmal numbers, 600 some people maximum on SteamDB, if I'm not mistaken, and it basically shut down within the span of 2 weeks. But yet all these professional game reviewers pushed it and pushed it hard. Oh, and what did Concord have in it? Oh, that's right, pronouns.
Sorry, did you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns! Fucking gender ambiguity! Fucking current day Californian shit!
We have number 4 to stir up anger, controversy, and division, driving clicks for ad revenue. We have several examples of this. We have the Kotaku article, where it essentially said that straight white male is the easiest difficulty setting there is. And this is on a website about video games. This even predated Gamergate. It was the first time I'd read an article from Kotaku and knew immediately something was wrong. Something didn't seem right. And then we have the famous Gamers Are Over articles, which appeared on several different gaming websites, saying gamers are over. Gamers don't have to be your audience. And well, that's because they aren't gamers. They're not writing for gamers like you and me. They're writing for people like themselves. They will sometimes play games, but most of them will not refer to themselves as a gamer. They don't consider themselves gamers, and for good reason, because they're essentially not. They're basically, at best, tourists in this space, and at worst, they're pillagers. They're pillaging and plundering our community. Then we have number 5, to push an active agenda. And I don't need to give many specific examples of this because several of the things I've already talked about do, but every review that highlights forced and/or artificial diversity is doing that. Or any conversation about games that celebrates the replacement of men with women, or race swapping to remove white characters, or artificially inflates the score or positive talk about a game featuring LGBTQIAP++ characters. This also includes praise for games that feature women, designed to look more mannish and less attractive to the male gaze. In this case, gaze is spelled G-A-Z-E as in a stare or a look. Or how about the reviews that mention feminism as good, capitalism as bad, or portray white people as evil, heartless colonizers? There are far more points we could address here. Social justice, the portrayal of police as the bad guys, side characters mentioning that they're gay despite it having nothing to do with anything in the story, shoehorn transgender characters that serve no other valid purpose but to be the token transgender character, the portrayal of male characters as weak or effeminate and in need of the heroic strength of a brave and powerful all-knowing woman. Or how about the completely out of place mention of Trump in a review of a game, having absolutely nothing to do with Trump or even politics, propaganda, agenda, ideology, left-wing politics, Marxism, feminism, critical race theory, pro-abortion messaging, support of border-violating illegals, games that misrepresent a non-white culture as purely good and noble. Hollywood has long pushed the myth of the noble, beautiful, pure, non-white cultures. Prime example is how the variety of American tribal cultures have been portrayed in movies. They are erroneously called Native Americans despite having migrated to the American continent across the Bering Strait from what is modern-day Asia. These tribal cultures are presented as always peaceful, in harmony with nature, always well-intentioned, deeply spiritual, and having great and ancient knowledge lost to time. No mention of the fact that most of these tribes warred with each other regularly, sometimes pillaging and plundering each other's communities. Men would be slaughtered, women taken as sex slaves and repeatedly assaulted, and children either killed or kidnapped. The ideology of these so-called professional game reviewers is full of ideology based in myths and lies, like the one I just talked about. It's based on radical left-wing propaganda, whose foundation is not in reality, not in nature, not in biology, not in science, not in truth, and not even in sanity. Studies have been done drawing a very strong correlation between left-wing ideology and mental illness. The more far left a person is in their worldview, the more likely they are to either have been diagnosed mentally ill or to self-identify as having a mental illness. These are not stable people, which is why you see many of them on YouTube and X literally calling for acts of violence against those who don't share their ideology. Death threats and calls for murder are not terribly uncommon. Many left-wing activists participate in violent riots that the equally left-wing news media mislabels as protests. We've seen numerous examples of this in the news in the last couple decades, and the violence from the left seems to increase in intensity over time. Short of personally trying to end your life, they will also try to get you deplatformed, removed from YouTube, X, Facebook, Patreon, and other services. They'll go after your sponsors to get your funding cut. They'll dig for your personal info and dox you in the hopes someone will use that information to harm you, your spouse, or your children. They'll try to get you fired from your job with lies and misinformation. They'll mass flag your tweets and videos to get them taken down. And they'll lie and say that you are the ones stopping people from having a voice. They'll tell people you are the violent one. They'll claim you're the bad guy. You're the one who everyone needs to worry about. No matter how many of us there are, they always like to claim that we're a small but vocal minority, a set phrase they repeat quite often. Keep this all in mind next time you see IGN's ignorant 7 out of 10, or their 6 out of 10 for a hit that gamers absolutely love, or a 9 or 10 out of 10 given to games that the vast majority of gamers actively dislike. Do these professional game reviewers represent you and your interests? They don't represent me or my interests, but they do often seem to represent someone's interests. The big corporations. The same ones churning out dog turds and telling us it's the next big thing we're supposed to love. Well, I don't love most of it. I'm sure you don't either. But if you love what I have to say, then consider giving this video a like. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. You can also leave your comments down below because I'd love to know what you think of this whole situation. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Fox with RealMarcFoxx. And remember folks, no real gamer uses motion blur. Bye everybody.